Welcome to the Positive Persistence Podcast, where ordinary people inspire your extraordinary success. What's up, Positive Persistence family? Our guest today is a Texas singer-songwriter, entrepreneur, and a powerful voice of resilience. He's faced incredible adversities, including addiction, felony DWI, and near-fatal battles with his mental health. Rather than seeking a traditional comeback, he chose to rebuild his life from the ground up, focusing on sobriety, relationships, and rediscovering his passion for music. Through his journey of transformation, he emphasizes the power of restoration over mere success, sharing lessons that inspire hope and strength. Ezra Vancil, welcome to the show.
Ian, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be here. You have such an interesting story, and I want to make sure that our listeners and viewers are able to hear it and that we can help some people through the process of sharing this story and your pearls of wisdom.
I'm ready to share my heart, and I'm so glad to have a platform like yours to tell this story and hopefully bring some inspiration to people in some tough times or trying to overcome.
Awesome. That's what this show is all about. So let's just dive right in. Now, I know that when we spoke before, you had touched on a near fatal experience that you had. And some of those, that is a pivotal moment that led you to what you say, choose life. And I was hoping that you could share more about some of those moments that you've experienced and what specifically inspired your decision to embrace life again. Because I think a lot of people who are in those situations want to give up. They don't want to fight. They make the choice to let life happen to them, but you made the choice to make life happen for you instead.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd have to jump back and just kind of touch on where I come from and what kind of led me into kind of a dark, a very dark era of my life, is that I was a very talented young guy, won awards, and I got signed to a record deal when I was still a teenager, 19 years old. Everything was looking up, and I had no plan B. It was music or nothing. And then that fell apart really due to kind of an overdose of the rock and roll life. I got into some heavy drinking and drugs during that time. And when I came back to life, like my first job out of that, when I got dropped from an LA deal, was washing windows. And I could hardly deal with not having success in my life. I was going to be something. I was going to either write books or do music. So I spent probably my 20s trying to climb back on top and make a name for myself. And I did some stuff, I ended up on some TV shows and it looked like it was all going up there again. But then underneath me, because I was disregarding all of my life, my emotional life and my family, my marriage fell apart. And my 30s, the music fell apart again. Whatever deals I was working were gone. And I just fell into an abyss of, I'd just say, despair, not really wanting to live with this story that I thought was my life was just this failure, and I was going to go work a menial job and I just couldn't do that. And so I just decided I'm just opting out. I'm getting out of here and fell deeper into the bottle, tried to drink it all away and ended up with some terrible consequences. So, I eventually got a DWI felony in a very embarrassing and shameful way. I was actually trying to quit drinking, and I came home one day, actually came home from church with my family and was getting cereal for the kids and found a bottle behind the cereal. And I blacked out. I don't remember what happened next. I just started drinking. And next thing I know, I wake up and I'm in a car flying down a road with my kids in the back. And I ran into a soccer game that was in the middle of a soccer game and hit a tree. And so that's the instant 2 felonies. I had 2 children in the car. And so you would think this would say, get your life together, but it just took the elevator down. I found out hell has a basement, I just kept going down with this and attempted, to take my life several times and even had a few of them that were deemed successful because my the ER doctor came out and told my wife that I wasn't coming out alive, that she better get prepared. So this was kind of just tumbling down and down. It's like I just couldn't even go any deeper down. Of course, there's divorce in there, and my children were the CPS deemed me an unfit parent. It was just so my fear of not having success and being somebody in this world, it's almost like I'm going to be somebody even if I'm the bottom rung. If people look at me just because I'm special because I'm so horrible. I don't know. It's something that I just want to be seen. Will I be a star, or where am I going to be somebody that people pity? But really, that's when at some point during all of this, the felony, the attempts on my life did not work. I woke up one day, and I was actually at night on a Valentine's Day, and woke up from a blackout. And I tell you, I don't know what it was, but I knew I just couldn't go on one more minute like this. I could not stand myself. And I woke up on the floor at night, and I looked at my phone, and I had been texting my son just walls of garbled, crazy text. And every once in a while, he'd say, "Dad, please stop." And something just snapped in me, and it broke, because I think I still held on to this idea that at least I loved my children, which was a lie, because love is an action. And I just broke. And I just, at the time, I called myself an atheist at the time, but I prayed to whoever's there, just show me who you are, help me. And that's when it all began. The next day was the last drink or drug I ever took. And I started a very slow process of rebuilding and finding my life and trying to heal my family. And that's where it all started.
Wow. And so that you just cold turkey, just like that. Boom.
That was the last day. Yeah, I went to like a recovery meeting, and they asked me if I could make it to the next day and come back without one drink. I said, I think I can do that. And that's pretty much how it went for months. I mean, I still had I went through nights of just cold sweats, and because I was drinking really heavily. And that's all I would do is just try to make it to that next day and call somebody and say, "I made it." And they're like, "Great. Can you make it to the next day?" That's how there was nothing in my life but just making it to that next day without a drink for months on end.
Just one day at a time, one step at a time. Yeah. Ezra, I know that you talk about needing to let go of a self-constructed identity. And hearing you tell your story, it sounded like you were constructing an identity of being a terrible, horrible, no good person, right? As you were talking about that, going down levels and levels and finding out that hell has a basement.
Yeah.
Now, can you elaborate on what the process looked like for you and how it led you to your personal reconstruction when you started to move in the opposite direction? I guess that all started that day, the day one after you decided not to drink anymore.
Yeah. It's a very slow process, but it just started with a decision to abandon that story. And I didn't know where to go from that, but it was like, whatever this story is, true or not, I can't live that. I mean, even if I lived in some delusion that I am loved and I can love people and that it would be better than this story I constructed, because I didn't really know that you could get out of a story or get out of your emotions. I thought they just were there and they ruled your life. And I would say that the biggest part of this is I had to get around people that were trying to do the same thing I was. And I had to live within a group of people instead. And it's actually the opposite of what I was doing before, because I surrounded myself with people who were destroying their lives. And I realized, though I didn't know what to do, these people have made it to the other side. They tell a story that's very similar to mine, and I'm just going to hang out with them and hopefully they rub off on me. But what happened is I started hearing that people, just like we're doing right here, had been where I was. There's plenty of felons out there that have changed their life. And not only have they changed their life, but they've become an asset to other people like they are. And I think that was the greatest hope. I no longer had the ambition for music or success. I wanted my life to mean something by stepping out of that story and being able to help somebody else that's in that story and say, it doesn't have to be this way. And I know how you feel, because not many people could do that with me. I would go to counselors and they could tell me whatever, you can be all right if you do this. I didn't believe that they knew me, that they knew what I was feeling, what I was suffering. So it literally had to be people that I felt like knew the road I'd been on and had done something about it. And so that was the biggest thing, and then there's some other things of just what I digest. So into my mind and into my heart, I lived back then on the darkest music, the darkest movies. They all were there to reinforce the story I was telling myself. That had to go away. In fact, I might watch a sad movie or something every once in a while, but in that time, I would say for a year or two, my day started with inspiration. I read inspiration. If I started getting down, I had books just everywhere, just that I could open that inspired me. I watched movies. I listened to music that called me out of what I was, to something greater. It was everything around me is like a diet for my spirit. I was on a diet. I was no longer eating this junk food of this world,
So you really changed your environment.
Yes, absolutely.
Not only by the people that you congregated with, the community of people that you saw and interacted every day, but in your own personal space, you made the conscious decision that you were going to take your word, ingest positivity, things that were going to actually build you up and not tear you down. And is that one of the things that you talk about when you say emphasize, because you emphasize the importance of daily routines for maintaining your progress? Are those some of those things that you're talking about there?
Absolutely. And to this day, I've been on this path for 13 years and I wake up every morning and I try to protect 2 hours for, some healthy things, exercise, but for sure I protect 1 hour, which is just in that. It's remembering what I'm doing, who I am, and inspiring myself that day to do the things that are meaningful to me, to keep walking on this path. And it's such a huge thing, and it can be kind of cliche. We hear it so much, but it's a cliche because it's true. You wake up, your first fruits, don't give them to the phone, don't give them to Instagram. Pick up stuff that's going to feed you, feed your heart. And so I'm all about that. And also I'm not so good at it, but I also try to end my days with kind of reflecting on the day and then saying, and not beating myself up, but just going, how did it go? And checking in with myself and kind of making a plan for the next day. So that, it touches on something because it's that relationship with yourself, which I didn't really have. Liquor got in the middle of that. My despair and my story got in the middle of me actually checking in and like having this relationship, treating myself like I would treat somebody else. I was just beating the hell out of myself every day, and I don't do that anymore. I won't allow that. Like you said, I just construct a world around me that reinforces uplifting life instead of, downgrading my life.
Ezra, before you started to make those conscious decisions to change, what do you think was driving that repetitive behavior of continuing just to beat yourself up every day? And I'm just curious, is it because you had that self-constructed identity of who you were, quote unquote, supposed to be, and that since you weren't meeting that you were a failure and that you were going to, I guess, drown your sorrows in drugs and alcohol to numb yourself from not feeling that gap between who you thought you were supposed to be and who you actually were in time, in reality?
Absolutely. No, you nailed it. My idea, in fact, I had somebody tell me that because even when I started changing, I was like, oh, I'm going to go back to music and nothing else. I will not consider anything else. And I had a friend tell me that it was like, you're in a box. Like you're just trapped in this idea of your life and you'll never see what's outside of it. He said, just crack that lid a little bit and let's let some other things in there. And at that time I actually did. And I went into business and my life started changing by allowing this story that I've built to really just get rid of it. Mm-hmm. And that's not easily done. What it is embracing uncertainty, because there's another thing is that, so I built this story and when things don't turn out when the people don't act the way I want, my life doesn't act the way that I want, I run back to my corner and drink or cry or whatever. And now I'm interacting in the reality, which is I have to embrace uncertainty. This reality it's not certain.
Yeah.
People are not going to react. I have no power over them. I don't even have power over the situations that happen to me. It all starts right here and right here. That's where the power lies.
Mm-hmm.
It's how it's come to me now. Now, how am I going to look at it? And that's what I would not do. It's really a control freak in a way of I will control my life to death. I will control everything or I'm going to die, you know? And now I'm just trying to let go of things and just go with it and say yes to it.
I feel like what you're talking about in a way is purpose, finding out what your purpose is supposed to be in life. And sometimes that's really difficult to do because, as you mentioned, you may have this self-prescribed idea of what you're supposed to achieve in life or supposed to be in life. But what's also dangerous is that we allow ourselves to fall into grooves that other people prescribe for us. Sometimes when we're younger, for me personally, parents. My dad had my whole life planned like you're supposed to do this because you're going to follow my footsteps and you're this type of person. And when you start to have one track of either what you believe you're supposed to be because someone told you you're supposed to be that, but your identity starts to go this way, there is that gap in there. And that's where that friction happens. And you have to figure out, like, what am I really meant to do? And sometimes it takes traumatic events in our lives to unveil your true purpose because it forces you to stop and take stock of what's going on. I remember I had a family member of mine while I was in a hospital recovering from my spinal cord surgery. And she basically told me like, this was supposed to happen because your life was moving too fast. You were doing too many things. You weren't headed in the right direction. This was supposed to happen. And at the time I was like, what? That didn't jive. Because I'm like, I'm going through all of this. This is a traumatic experience. What are you talking about? It's supposed to happen. In retrospect, if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have found my purpose, which is that's the path I'm on now. And I'm just curious to think, like, what are your thoughts about your own experience? And do you find that is true in any way?
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, just like you expressed there, when I was too close to the pain of this change in my life, I wouldn't have said that. But I look back and I see it's actually a good thing, and it's hard if somebody's in it, they don't want to hear that. But I look back and go, I'm like, thank God this happened. Because first of all, there's a richness in me that wasn't there and that I wasn't looking for, that was just forced upon me by my stubbornness of continuing to go the wrong way. So that, like you said, when it snapped, when my whole world fell apart, I realized, first of all, that I had been going the wrong way. And second of all, that all of this stuff I was carrying, it's not mine. I was carrying ideas of music, of creativity, of my life, of what it's supposed to be. I have that too. I have musical parents. I have a successful family. All these things I was carrying, I just realized this is not mine. And she started asking that question. It's funny to ask. I asked it when I was young, but what do you want to be when you grow up? I started asking this at 40 years old of what was I supposed to be? What do I love? Because I was just going through one thing after another of what people thought I should do, but never asking myself, what do I love? Like, what inspires me? And that again is that relationship. It came to me kind of suddenly. I have several purposes in this life, but my purpose, kind of like yours, is that I want to help people. This pain that I went through and this defeat in my life, I now have an asset in that. I understand it. And other people had that too that helped me, and I could see it in their eyes. There was no BS going on. They knew, and they came and they took my hand and they helped me understand what I needed to, how my thinking needed to change. That's what I have. I've actually been given like a gift in that way where I understand something in a way that's very visceral. And so that's like a built-in purpose is when you overcome something, you've got a built-in purpose because, man, nothing feels better than when you've been able to help somebody else overcome what you had to overcome. It's an amazing feeling. And so that's, it's just, I'll touch on also just all this stuff we carry that's not ours. This is part of that routine for me is Carl Jung, I got into for a while, and he calls it differentiating yourself or individualizing, which is finding that individual, kind of mining yourself through journaling, through contemplation and meditation and prayer, and like starting to understand what do I love. And then doing it despite what the world is saying, because the world's always going to there's always going to be someone there to knock what you're doing. But you have found what it is when you keep going anyways. You don't change your direction because somebody dogs on you because, that's stupid. That guy failed. You just keep going because you found that thing that gives you that feel, that life, and you're chasing it now. And it doesn't matter what the world is doing. It's real inside of you.
It's time to ask yourself, when was the last time you prioritized you? Did you know that research shows that nearly 85% of high performers struggle to maintain a performance mindset while juggling the demands of work and personal life? Those who actively prioritize their performance mindset and personal growth are 30% more likely to achieve their goals in business and life. If you're feeling crippling stress and anxiety, or if you're feeling guilty when you take a moment for yourself, or if you're stuck in the grind and feeling burnt out, you're not alone. Many of us yearn for more, but struggle with the fear of being judged or feeling selfish. And you want to step into the next best version of yourself. That's why I created the Rinse Method, which got me from paraplegic to marathon runner. Backed by science-based proven strategies and now customized for high performers like you. If you're stuck and stressed and want clear steps that you can implement today to move forward, make sure you visit thepositivepersistence.com to download our free Rinse PDF. That, Ezra, is one of the building blocks, I believe, of resilience, right? And you touched on it before when you said when you have this and this, for those of you who are listening and not watching, I'm pointing to my head and to my heart. When you have those two things in alignment, you're unstoppable. And having that conviction, that passion, that light that you're talking about, that pulls you through adversity, that pulls you through, it doesn't matter how much work I have to do because now it's irrelevant. The work's irrelevant. The struggle's irrelevant because I have to achieve this thing that is giving me joy. That is now my new passion. It's giving me life. It's giving me purpose, as we talked about. It will pull you out of bed at 4 a.m. in the morning when you don't want to get up, but you know that you have to answer this call because it's your soul that's telling you that this is what I'm meant to do. And I love the fact you said that you've had a lot of purposes because I think people also need to understand that your purpose can change through life depending on the season you're in. And I'm glad that you said that you were asking yourself at 40 years old, like, what do I want to be when I grow up? I didn't know what I wanted to do until I was 35. 35 years old, I finally figured out like, this is what I want to do. This is what I've been called to do. This is why I'm on this planet. This is the purpose. And I think that for a lot of us, it's hard to find that purpose in what we truly want to do because we're stuck in these ruts, if you will, of these lives that we've created for ourselves that have put us in that box you talked about. And we need to find ways to crack the lid, to let other ideas in and be comfortable with, as you said, being uncomfortable and like putting ourselves out, being outside of that comfort zone, because that's where the gold lies, right? I heard a quote once that the only difference between a rut and a grave is its length.
That's good.
Right? I was like, wow,
that's great.
That had me thinking like, you got to change some things up because, for a lot of us, we are kind of like the walking dead, not to be dramatic, but like we're just going through the Groundhog Day, going through the same things, not being in touch with our emotions and our feelings and understanding that we can change the situation, if you want to bad enough. And you had talked about, the community of people being one of the things that helped you change. And I want to touch back on that and going into the support system. Like for you, how important was that for you to have that support system of people around you to help you take the steps necessary to become the next best version of you?
It was detrimental that I had people in my life. I don't think I could have done it. And I'll say it's the last thing in the world I wanted to do was to open up to somebody and ask for help. I don't know why that is, but I tried to take my life before I would ask somebody truly. I might ask for money. I might ask for the things I think I need, but to say, tell me what you think I need to do, I just couldn't do it. And so I would say it's gold in my life. And it's mainly men in my life that have mentors. I have several mentors right now that have helped me just see, just like what you're talking about. In fact, while you're talking, I remember one of them telling me that my fear is what I need to walk towards. He wanted me to write down my fears. And I wrote down snakes, and he goes, no, not that kind of fear, the kind that keep you from going forward in your life. And what they are is a compass. They're pointing the opposite way of where you need to go. And I started looking at all my fears, and I had so many, but it's fear of people, like what we're doing right now, of even talking and like letting myself be vulnerable. I had, fear of being successful, and I had fear of all kinds of things. But little by little, with somebody's help, I'd address these fears by trying in my own life to start walking towards them. So it's stuff like that, and I have people in my life now. I kind of collect, if I meet, especially old men, I love wise old men. And I like to this is something I put in there just to know, is that I don't go to somebody that isn't married and ask for marriage advice. I don't go to somebody that doesn't have a business. Each man kind of has his own specialty of something I see in them that I'm like, it might be a great marriage. And I want to know that guy. I want to know how he does that. And I allow myself to ask, even if he tells me stuff I already know, I need to listen again, because that's the fastest way not to hear anything, is to think I already know this. And so it's an incredible relationship, that I have with people that have, really just saved my life. A lot of them don't even know it, but I try to tell them every once in a while just how much. And I'll drop in there too. I've had several times paid coaches in certain aspects where I needed to get over some, especially in business things, where I've paid somebody to come in and help me get over some hurdles in business and understandings in that. And so wherever I can get it, I need insight from other people, because in here it can get pretty chaotic sometimes. I can't always trust where I'm thinking. I need a mirror to bounce it off of and hear it spoken back. And then suddenly I can kind of see more clearly.
Yeah, having coaches can be invaluable. Absolutely. And again, having that community of people that can hold up that mirror to you and force you to take a look and move towards your fears. And I wonder, as you're saying, you would ask for money, you would ask for other things other than help. Is that because you didn't want to accept that you were wrong, or that you didn't want to be, like you didn't want to accept that? Because I know that acceptance is a crucial part of a journey of moving forward from your setbacks. And I wonder, like, what does that mean to you? Like, what does acceptance mean to you? And how can others, in your view, use that to cultivate their lives, especially when they're facing adversity?
Well, acceptance in so many ways. It's really kind of a foundational thing for my life today. But, tying it to other people and asking for help. I think back then, I didn't want anybody breaking my story. And so whenever they would give me any advice, I'd point, but you don't know this and this. And, you've probably dealt with people, and the line of alibis just starts piling up while they can't do what you say. So first, that willingness had to be there. And then second, I have to accept that I don't know all the answers. And if I do know an answer, that I might not even have the ability to put it into action. And there's a part of it of accepting that I can be wrong and being okay with that. I'm always looking for, it's a weird thing with working with people, because it's messy with people, because things hit your ego, they say, and it like hurts. And so when I'm talking to anybody, even somebody I might have a lot of disagreement with, I'm always just trying to look at, where are they right? I had this with our leadership group at my business. We had kind of an antagonistic meeting, and somebody called me out on something. And man, I got steamed. And I come home and told my wife, and she goes, well, was he right? Yeah, he was actually right. And acceptance is just accepting I'm not perfect. I can't do this by myself. And accepting it's kind of faith is kind of opening up myself to allow someone else into my life and accepting the imperfections of everybody, but knowing too that there's tons of value. I hardly meet a person, even people, I meet people on the down and out that are just walking in and trying to change their life. I can learn from them. It might be of what not to do. It could be very wise where the place they're at. If I'm willing and accepting that there's all kinds of riches in other people and in my life, I could just go, I'm sorry if I just wander on this, but even in I accept circumstances, because hard circumstances have taught me the greatest lessons in my life. I think I talked to you when we first met about just saying yes. I have a blanket yes to my life. It's already yes. When I show up and the day is hard, it's like, oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yes, I agreed to this because I can't think of a hard situation that did not teach me something really well. So I'm just accepting it and I'm showing up and I'm doing what I can.
Love that. Having that positive attitude of I'm here, so let's make the best of it.
That's right.
Now, you spoke about, like in our conversation earlier, you talked about striving for wholeness instead of mere success. And I'd like to unpack that a little bit. How would you define wholeness, and why do you believe it's more important than the conventional metric of success?
So wholeness, it involves a lot of things, but I think the easiest way to understand wholeness is, and all of us might kind of know this from our young life when we're coming in and trying to figure out the world. We're a different person with different people. And so when I would go to work, I would act this way. When I go to church, I'd act this way. When I was around my family, I would act this way. And I was a partier around these people. I had like 6 or 7 different people. Now, wholeness is that I'm the same person wherever I go. And that's what I want in my life. When I go to work, now my mode might change. I'm much more serious at work, but that I'm here. Yeah, I'm just to reach out, and I'm still here. I'm just Ezra's here, and he's being a little more serious. I might be more playful here. So wholeness is that I'm the same person wherever I go. I've built a relationship with myself that I'm okay being Ezra in all these places. And I think that it ties to success. First of all, to look at the way that we look at success, I can only speak from my own experience, but I would show up and try to act the way they thought I should act. So I was putting on one of those masks, one of those characters, and trying to fit in here, here, here. And so when I focus on wholeness and just being who I am and building who I am, then I'm going to show up as Ezra and I'm going to be myself in all situations. And that actually, I think, the best way to find success in life, and I've brought it into business. It allows me not to be playing the game so I can step out and get awkward with people because I'm not afraid of, am I doing this right or what will they think? It allows me in music when I'm on the stage to be real and authentic and really bring something to people in the night. And so I think that's like the easiest way for me to think of wholeness. I'm just the same person wherever I go. And I'm not perfect at this. This is just my ideal, is that I want to do that. I don't want to be put on a mask. I want to just be myself.
Let's use the word perfect, because I know that when we spoke before, you embrace the idea of progress, not perfection, which is something that I love that as well. How can someone struggling with their setbacks shift their mindset like you were able to do to focus on progress instead, especially when it feels like they are at an uphill challenge, like a daunting challenge is standing in front of them?
I think so. Kind of that I'm not going to drink until I wake up, and talk to somebody the next day is a little bit of that. But if I back up, what was really happening is I had to give up the game of what I was doing. So if I'm going to change my life, what we do a lot is, like, I remember when the several times I tried to quit drinking, I was also going to start running. I was going to quit smoking. I was going to fix my marriage. I was going to do all these things. I've sabotaged the whole thing before I started. And so I had to give up the game of this rush to have it all and to do everything at once. And progress for me, to get in that mindset, is there's only one thing I'm doing. And I try to do that even now. If I'm making an album, yeah, of course I have to take care of day to day, but this is all I'm doing right now. I'm making this album. And so progress is a measurement for me, is, have I done anything towards that today? And so when I didn't take a drink that first day, man, I felt amazing. And the second day, if I just didn't take a drink, and then suddenly my progress is that I'm accepting reality that time takes time. I'm not going to fix it all by next Thursday, And so my progress is, did I just do something today? And I can celebrate that and I feel good. And even today, I still live off of that progress, not perfection, is that even if I can remember what I'm doing and if I could just be grateful that day, I've made a little progress. And so it's just knowing where I'm going. Like, I guess that's what I'm trying to say is, if you don't know where you're going, you can't put that measurement in place. But if you know where you're going and you accept the reality that it's going to take some time, then progress is any step towards that, or any day that wasn't a step backwards, And I find it pretty hard to embrace that even today because I still want more.
You want it all?
But
Yeah, sure.
yeah, but that's one of the things I do in my morning rituals. I'm remembering that. I kind of have lists of things that I've done. So I've looked at my life and the day before and look at the day ahead, and I'm writing down some things that you did this kind of fell apart, but you had a good attitude about it. Progress. I've stepped forward. It's good.
I love that. All right, Ezra, I want to ask you if you could offer just one piece of advice to someone currently struggling with addiction or significant life challenges, what would that piece of advice be?
Let your life get really small. And if it needs to fall down, let it fall down. Don't be afraid of it getting very small, meaning like I was just talking about, we're no longer chasing. Let's say if you're wrestling with addiction and your marriage is falling apart or your job's falling apart, let them fall. It's not a bad thing. Focus on the thing that is stopping you and let your focus just be on that. Let things fall away. We carry way too much in this modern age anyways. That's where I found the final change is when there's a saying that said, sacrifice the 1,000 for the one. And I sacrificed the 1,000 things that I thought I had to fix. And I just started looking at the one.
That is simplistic, but profound at the same time. And, there is cannot be more truth that comes through the words of someone who has been through it. Like, as you mentioned before, Ed Milet says that you are most qualified to help the person that you used to be. So I love the fact that you're able to come on and share this with us. Actually, I want to give you a chance to let our listeners and viewers know where they can find more about Ezra and more about your story and the things that you have to offer. Where can we find that?
The best place would be on my website. It's EzraVancil.com, just my name. And on there, you'll find I've got a new book out it's got a lot of what we're talking about. It's a journal that I wrote with poetry and a lot of things to inspire myself to make when I was making a double album, which was hard. And so I've got a book that captures all that on there and my music. It's on vinyl and CD. And of course, you could always look up my name in Spotify or Apple, whatever, and listen to my music. And then I'm on Instagram mostly. So it's just my name at Ezra Vancil on Instagram.
Awesome. Ezra, thank you so much for being with us today. Appreciate you and your time. And I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers as well for joining us on this episode. And we'll wrap it up like we always do. Remember to stay positive, stay persistent, and know that mindset is everything. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in and being part of the Positive Persistence family. We're having a great time creating this content, and we truly hope it inspires you to embrace positivity and persistence in your own journey. If this podcast episode inspired you or entertained you, scroll down, hit those stars, and leave a comment or two. Your 5-star reviews and shares encourage us and help us grow the show. So until next time, stay positive, stay persistent, and remember, mindset is everything.